Hello there, and welcome back to General Kenobi's Bunker. Thank you so much for joining me here on another episode of The High Ground. Welcome, everybody. I hope everybody's having an awesome Wednesday night. How is everybody doing? I hope awesome. Thank you so much for joining us here tonight in the bunker. If this is your first time here, welcome. We like to talk around Star Wars around here. So we hope that you enjoy the show, and we also hope that you can check out our main channel, General Kenobi's Bunker, over on YouTube. So, wow, the chat is on fire already. Um, so let's before we bring in our very special guest, because we got a lot to talk about, with him. I'm just gonna say hi to the chat here real quick. Rolando, our super moderator for everybody here on YouTube. I don't know how he does it. I'm pretty sure there's at least 11 of them of him, just doing the whole thing. LeBron fan, thank you so much for joining, man. Appreciate it. Yukon Phil, man, our fellow toy hunter here on YouTube. Thank you so much for joining. Appreciate you guys. Welcome, welcome. Duffman Dioramas, what's up, man? How's it going? Okay, everybody saying hi to everybody in the chat. And you know what? Let's just go ahead and talk a little bit about our guest tonight. So my guest has been doing this thing right here just way better, like at least 250%, better. So he is no stranger to being in front of the camera, being on a live stream. However, we flipped the tables on him a little bit this time around. This time around, he's not, with his hands like a puppeteer controlling everything as he usually is, on his own show, which again, it's why it's so successful. But so he's been, like I said, no stranger to the live stream community. He works with a whole like clan of awesome guys, that talk about Star Wars and do all kinds of reviews. They do, reactions. They are on it like every single day. So these guys do amazing work. And my guest tonight, was kind enough to cut up, some space, in, in his super busy calendar to come talk to us here in the bunker. So we are very grateful to do so. He is just an awesome guy overall. He or I've been actually honored to be a guest over on his show a few times now. It's always great. It's always a great discussion. These guys are super well informed. Again, I don't know how he does it. I'm pretty sure he's got a lot of buttons working for him. Um, but without further ado, because like I said, we got a lot to talk about tonight. I'm gonna bring in our guest tonight, David Lozano. What is going on, my man? Welcome
What's
to the
up, man?
bunker.
Thank you. I finally have the high ground.
Yes. Yes, it's long overdue, man. Like I said, you've been kind enough to have me on y'all's show a few times now. I want to say we're going on like maybe 5 times, just around there. Maybe
It
a
might
little
be
bit more
more
than
than
that,
that.
actually.
I think it might be like 10
Yeah, I
times.
was gonna say maybe it's 15, but who's counting? Uh, and so thank you so much for that. Like I said, it's always an absolute blast to talk to you and talk to the guys over there. But you know, this show is gonna be a little bit more about you. Okay. So what say you we kick off things, and guys, if you don't know, uh David is part of Star Wars Stuff podcast. Okay. And don't let the name fool you, because don't narrow it down to just a podcast. These guys do it all. Okay. Like I said, they are actually live right now on YouTube as we speak. So I'm not gonna put the link because I don't want you guys to leave. Okay. No, I'm just kidding. I'll drop it in a little bit. But so these guys are super busy. They're always on it. And like I said, David has been a big part of this clan, of people that are always there to bring you the information regarding Star Wars. They have their finger on the pulse, absolutely, each and every single day. So, but like I said, today we're gonna talk about David a little bit more. So we'll start with, like I said, with your secret origin, as we like to do here in the bunker. So tell me, do you remember when you fell in love with Star Wars?
I guess I was maybe, man, I want to say like 2.5, 3 years old.
Ooh, there you go. That's a
Uh,
youngling.
I think one of my earliest memories is my dad taking. I was born in 1981, so I was -4 when Star Wars dropped.
Yeah,
So I'm a VHS kid. So I remember my dad. I still have that memory that my dad getting the VHS, telling me something along the lines of, "I want to show you something really great."
nice,
And he loads the VCR, and we had a wood console TV on the ground, as you
classic.
do in the 1980s.
Oh yeah,
And he popped it in, and my dad was watching me watch the film for the first time. And of course, the crawl, I couldn't read the crawl. I think he may have read it out loud to me, which probably didn't make any sense to me.
right,
But
yeah,
when the Tantive flies over and then the Star Destroyer shows up chasing it and keeps on going and going and going, I think my dad was watching my reaction. He starts laughing. I remember his laugh super clearly. And I think my jaw was probably on the ground because seeing something that huge, I mean that's the genius of A New Hope in Star Wars. That opening scene,
agreed.
opening up, just dumbfounded and amazed by what I was watching. And of course, I think it's the same story that everyone else has, that man, there's 2 more films after this if you're of a certain age.
Right.
So we had all 3 films, episode 4, 5, and 6. So of course, I watched episode 6, and then the whole reveal of Vader being Luke's father, spoiler alert.
Yeah,
And then getting to Return of the Jedi, then seeing that epic space battle. That's what made, I think, Return of the Jedi my favorite as a kid. And still, I
I
think
agree.
it, to this day, is my favorite. I acknowledge that Empire Strikes Back is probably the best as a film, but as a Star Wars movie, I think Return of the Jedi is the best.
There you go. Very well said.
Yeah, yeah. And I grew up in a Star Wars family. My dad loved it.
Lucky.
I guess my mom tolerated it. My older brothers
Yeah.
loved it. I'm not sure if I got the toys or if my brothers had the toys, and they just kind of like, I just like inherited them because they
Right.
were a lot older than me. But yeah, I mean, I'm a child of the 80s, and I grew up with that stuff, watching Star Wars just about every single day for years and years. My cousins would come over, my mom would babysit them, and they would say, "Let's not watch Star Wars again," because I kept on putting in the tape. And the thing that still boggles my mind to this day, I don't know what those tapes were made of, but I never wore them out. I'd watch Star Wars all the time. And then I'd hear stories about people wearing out their VHS.
Yeah.
Maybe our particular player, I think it came from overseas actually.
Ooh, there you go.
My brother was a Marine, and I think he shipped it over from Japan, and then he shipped over the trilogy too.
Oh,
So I was watching widescreen Star Wars
oh,
as a baby.
you lucky, lucky son of a gun.
Yeah, and he shipped me an X-wing toy as well, the actual
Really?
original X-wing with the Luke inside.
Oh man, that's awesome.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of my original memories are tied into Star Wars. Uh, I think another memory that I haven't mentioned many other times, it might be before Star Wars, but I remember I was in church with a 3.5-inch Luke Skywalker action figure
There you go.
playing on the benches in church. And that might have been one of the points where my like subconscious came to being.
Yep.
And the other memory, ironically, is going to Disneyland when I was like a little baby too. And I think that's my very, very first memory. Mickey Mouse coming to give me a hug, and I was just terrified.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't know about
Super
that.
terrified. Yeah, yeah. I think I was happy at first, and then it's like, oh my God, what is this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I can see that happening, dude. That's awesome, man. I mean, you were lucky enough, or let's say fortunate enough, right, to grow up, in a family that embraced this kind of stuff. Um, and I'm not gonna say that my family embraced it. That they didn't hate it either, right? But they were just like, yeah, I mean, he likes weird stuff, and they would, just walk away. So it's super cool that you actually grew up with some of the toys, even, right? Like some of the
Yeah.
originals. I'm assuming.
Yeah.
They were always around. So that is super cool. And yeah, you got to give it to the Japanese, man. They build quality stuff. I'm not gonna
Yeah.
lie. So that's good. So that's super awesome. Guys, just real quick, go ahead and check out all the links that our mods are dropping here in the chat. This one, for example, is for Duffman Dioramas. If you haven't, go check him out. Definitely on YouTube, but also on Instagram. Awesome, awesome work. We got the Legacy of Nerd in the house. What's going on, Daniel? Excuse me. I hope that you're finally getting a little bit more sleep these days. But so my man, Legacy of Nerd, is gonna be doing an interview with I'm blanking out his actual name, but Rocky from Power Rangers. So the guy who replaced the original Red Ranger. So that's gonna be super dope. Um, Rolando dropping the Star Wars Stuff podcast YouTube channel. So I'd appreciate it if you guys go check them out. Like I said, they are actually live right now. Um, and so, as I mentioned, David works with a few, well, more than a few other people here on the Star Wars Stuff podcast, and they do amazing work, all of them. So they basically sort of take turns, covering different stuff, but they're always very, very active, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. So again, guys, just please go check out some of the links being dropped here in the chat. I'd appreciate it. If you don't, please go ahead and sub. Like I said, they do some amazing work. Star Wars said, "What is going on, man? Thank you so much for joining us tonight." Josue, thanks, man. Thanks for being here. Appreciate you guys. Um, so uh, let's fast forward, a few years, right? You've been a Star Wars fan, during your childhood, right? Uh, was there a point like maybe most of us when you felt that you were sort of outgrowing it, or were you like this stuff, yeah, it's cool, but kind of tone it down, or put the VHS in the closet, like I'm like, it's all right, I don't have to watch it, maybe once a year or something like that. I know a lot of us, and the classic line is, oh yeah, when I started being more interested in girls, that's when I dropped some of this stuff to go chase after them and things like that. But did you ever felt that you had a sort of let's call it sort of like a drop in your fandom?
Yeah, I think there's a huge drop because, like I said, I'm a kid of the 80s. 3 films for a 20-year span. I know they're the Timothy Zahn books that came out, but it
Yeah.
really didn't feel like those were canon per se, because they
Right,
weren't
right.
films. I fell in love with the films. I want to see live action. I mean, I still love Star Wars, and the more I grew up, the more I figured that at some point we were going to get more, just because they were such huge moneymakers and so
Smart.
beloved. But I was just impatient and angry. I'm like, come on, we gotta get this thing going again.
Yeah.
And maybe not until 2001, when the Lord of the Rings dropped, it kind of reinvigorated my passion for something magical can still be created. Because up to that point, I think we maybe had, in between that time and Star Wars, maybe Jurassic Park was the only other film that really like reignited my love for film, for CGI, for dinosaurs were a big thing at a couple points in my life. And of course, I knew that ILM, George Lucas's company, did the effects. And the documentary that was released on Disney Plus about ILM was very, very insightful. How they kind of got the dinosaurs actually,
nice.
how they created it from scratch, and then the like, oh my god moment, when Kathleen Kennedy and I guess Frank Marshall and Spielberg saw it for the first time, and they're like, everything has changed. But yeah, that was a whole incredible time. But yeah, for me, it's Star Wars, The Lord of the Rings, Dallas Cowboys, and the San Antonio Spurs. Those are the big 4 in my life.
Very nice.
Every time someone asks me, my wife, what do I get you for Christmas or birthday? I said, I just named those 4 things. I mean, you really can't go wrong there. So yeah, if you notice in the back there, I have a championship trophy amongst all the Star Wars
nice
stuff.
Very nice.
Also, my very first podcast that I created was a San Antonio Spurs podcast. Very, very short-lived, but I still created that podcast. And,
man.
I joke around with I still talk to those friends to this day. We didn't really keep up with it. I didn't have any equipment whatsoever. I don't know if anyone ever listened to it, because I think back then, I think we created it maybe like 20, 2015, I think, after they won their last championship.
Mm,
And we just tried it out because podcasts were becoming a big thing. One of the hosts, Sam, he introduced me to podcasts, I want to say like in 2011. And it was such an interesting concept to me. It was basically radio, um, most of them without commercials, and it was just people talking about interesting things. And it felt like a kind of look into the ordinary person's life, and what their opinions are. I mean,
very
it's
much so.
you go to the movies, enjoy a movie, and you can tell when you're with fellow fans. But then once the movie's over, you go your separate ways. You don't talk to those
Exactly.
people. It's like, man, what if that's like my best friend that will
Right.
never be my best friend? And it's
Right.
like you
Yes.
scatter and you never see those
Oh
people
man.
ever again.
Yeah.
And but podcasting, I thought, was a really cool way to get other people's opinions and views, and just to hear what the people thought, see what they caught that you didn't catch. And yeah, still to this day, I mean, I'm on the search for great podcasts. And like I said, I started that San Antonio Spurs podcast. That didn't really take off. My buddies just didn't want to keep up with it. But then um, for the Orlando Star Wars celebration, I met Colin, who's one of the big co-hosts on our podcast.
Right.
Um, he was a big Star Wars fan, and we met there. And another buddy, I created a Facebook group called Star Wars Stuff before I had a podcast. And one of the members, he messaged me and he said, "Hey, I live in Orlando. I can maybe save you a spot in line since I know you're coming from Texas." So I
Oh,
said, "Yeah,
cool.
sure, go for it." And the day that I think the day before celebration started, I told him, "Hey, man, if you can't get in line right now." He's like, "What?" I'm like, "Yeah, man, get in line. There's probably a line if you can. If you can't, that's cool." But he's like, "I don't believe you. Let me drive by and see." He drove by and he saw the long line.
Sure
He's
enough.
like, "Oh my God, you're telling the truth. Let me go back home and get my stuff. I'm going to
Yep.
sleep here." And I'm like, "Okay, man, sounds good to me." That sounded great.
Wow.
So we get there, and he's very, very far at the head of the line. He wasn't at the very front, but he was towards the front, so I knew that we
Okay.
were going to get into the 40th panel because that was a
Oh,
big thing. They didn't say who was going to
right.
be there,
Yeah.
but I was
You're right.
watching the Star Wars show. Andy and Anthony were talking about it, and Andy was like, "This isn't a panel you want to miss." And
Yeah.
right when she said that, I'm like, "Oh my God." It's like George Lucas is going to be there. Harrison Ford's probably going to be there. And I was like, I cannot miss this. And so that's when I met Colin. I basically cut in line, and they told him I had trivia, which I did, and I did trivia with them. And I met Colin there for the first time, our podcast co-host. But the other funny kind of coincidence is once we got in line, we camped out. We slept overnight inside the convention center,
Right.
and we were underneath a banner of General Grievous. And I took a picture of the crowd just randomly. And when Force Friday hit, when I flew back home, Force
Right.
Friday hit for The Last Jedi. There's a guy in line. This was in New Braunfels, Texas, at a
Yeah.
Target. There was two guys behind me, and I was kind of in the celebration mood. Celebration's an awesome place to go. If you
It
haven't
totally is.
gone, I mean, the vibe,
Yeah.
it feels like Christmas morning, like every single
Yes.
day.
I agree.
That's the feeling you get. You're like a different person, you know.
Oh, I agree completely.
It's such a weird thing. It's just endorphins all the way,
Yeah.
especially if you get into the panels and you're seeing all these
Yes.
celebrities
Oh man.
and everyone's in a good mood. Everyone's talking about Star Wars. There's nothing I can't say about Star Wars that someone is
Right.
not going to understand.
I was gonna say
Not
there's
like real
no such
life.
thing as like a deep cut, in that crowd, right? Like you can go as far back into the story as you want, as far deep into the movies as you want, as like insanely detailed into the lore as you want, and there's probably somebody who's right there with you, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. That first night, we were talking about Star Wars, talking about the prequels, talking about the future sequels. And there were so many deep cuts being thrown around.
right,
And it's just that feeling when you wake up in the morning, it's Christmas morning, you know you're gonna get something good. That's the feeling you have
Agree.
at
Totally
Celebration.
agree.
So yeah, some of the deep cuts people are talking about CO Bibble, and that cracked me up. That I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah,
I mean, I was laughing until I had like tears coming down my face because we were laughing so hard about different things.
that's
People
so
were doing
awesome.
impressions
Wow.
like on the mark, on the money impressions of creatures and characters. And then a lightsaber competition broke out, and Colin
Whoa.
actually was one of the refs. He participated and became the
Okay.
ref, and he kind of became a celebrity at that convention because every time we were walking around, they're like, "Hey man, good job with the lightsaber stuff." And he's like, "Yeah, right on."
That's awesome.
So yeah, but back to the picture I took. The picture I took, I talked to when I went to Force Friday in New
Yeah.
Braunfels, Texas for The Last Jedi. I was like in the celebration mood. I'm like, this needs to be a lot like Celebration.
Right.
So I turned to the guy. I was first in line to get
Look at you.
the
Good
merch,
job.
me and my
Yeah,
buddy.
of course.
And I turned to the guy that's right behind us, and I'm like, man, this is like Celebration. I'm gonna talk to him and see what's up. So I started talking about stuff, and he really wasn't feeling it. It felt like he really wasn't that knowledgeable in Star Wars, and I'm like,
Oh
why
yeah.
is this guy even here? So I'm like, next.
Scalper.
So I talked to the next guy after him. He was with his wife, and I noticed he was wearing a Celebration T-shirt. And I was like, "Oh, you went Celebration, huh?" He's like, "Yeah, yeah, I was there. Me and my wife took a trip. We're from San Marcos." And I was like, "Really?" I was like, "Did you go to the 40th panel?"
Yeah.
He said, "Yeah, yeah, we slept overnight." I was like, what
What?
banner were you under?"
Yeah.
He goes, "The Grievous banner." I said, "I was under the Grievous banner." I was like, "We didn't meet."
Whoa.
And then I brought my phone out, and that picture I took, I showed him. I was like, "Find yourself in this picture," kind of thinking that maybe he wasn't telling me the
Right.
truth.
Yeah. Hey,
And he
absolutely.
goes, like, immediately, he's like, "I'm right there." He was one line next to us.
No way.
So a city away from mine, he was
That's
one line next to
insane.
us in Orlando, Florida. So
That
yeah,
is crazy.
we kind of bonded over that. We talked about
Sure.
a lot
Yeah.
of Star Wars. He knew his stuff, and we exchanged numbers. We're like, "Yeah, man, let's talk about Star Wars." We became instant friends, and we would text each other back and forth. And his wife goes, "You guys talk about Star Wars so much. Why don't y'all just do a podcast?" And he told me this,
Light
and
bulb.
I was like, "Well, yeah. I mean, I've done a podcast in the past. It really didn't pan out, but yeah, let's do it." And he's like, "Yeah, come over." And I'm like, "Come over?" He's like, "Yeah, yeah, come. I live here, and you just come over." I'm like, "This guy doesn't even know me. I could be like a freaking serial killer or something."
Absolutely.
And so I go over. We have like a crude setup. I think we used our phones, and I think we used Audio Boom for the first time to host
Ooh.
our podcast.
Yeah.
And we just used phone mics, and we record our first podcast. And then we just kept on doing it just about every week because we had a lifetime of stuff that we experienced with Star Wars to
Sure.
talk about. So there was really never any dead air, and we just kept
Right.
on going. We
No
had pretty
shortage of
good
topics.
chemistry. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it worked out. And then I converted the Facebook group that I had dedicated to Star Wars to the Star Wars Stuff podcast group page, um, and started
Which, by
meeting
the
more
way, I am
people.
dropping right now here in the chat. So go join that awesome group. I am part of it, and yeah, it's super super dope. So right there on the chat. Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, no problem. So there was another person from, I believe, San Marcos who we were like, "You want to come like guest host?" And he guest hosted, and he was pretty good. And we're like, "Yeah, just become part of the podcast." So we had 3 people for a
Nice.
while, and he had other friends that love movies, so we kind of spun that off into a movie podcast that's now kind of defunct because it was just too much. It's just way too much, man. And
Yeah.
those guys were kind of starting off their lives. They got married. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. Of course.
they had kids, and we all kind of moved away. I stayed in the same spot. So James, I this was 2018 when we started the podcast. So I think 2019 for May the 4th be with you. Stitcher featured our podcast on their website and kind of promoted us without
Awesome.
us even knowing.
Right.
And then that's when we saw the huge uptick in listens.
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
And yeah, we were like, where are all these listens coming from? It's like, what happened? It's like one person found us and like just like spread the word. But yeah, it just kind of took off from there, and we were just kind of amazed how many people were listening because we were just talking about our experiences, and I love talking about bleeding edge news, and I think that all kind of evolved from being a high school kid, waking up early to go to high school early. And my first period was Algebra 2, but it was held in a computer lab, which had a T1
Ah,
line. So I would go
whoa.
there, I would jump on theforce.net. I would
Yes,
find out all the information I could about the prequels, especially about episode one, read
absolutely.
up about all that stuff.
Wow.
And that's kind of something I still do to this day. I go out to various websites and news sites. I had heard back then that the script leaked, I think, from Ain't It Cool News. And I didn't believe that. I was like, there's no way that script is going to leak, but it did.
Yeah.
And then you kind of jump to 2014 when, of course, The Force Awakens is about to drop. And I started going on YouTube and listening to podcasts for people that claim they knew what was going to happen.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people who basically just straight up make up lies. But there were some people who were telling the truth.
Yeah.
And I was like, how is this even possible? I mean, the sets are locked. The scripts are printed on red paper with black ink, so you can't photocopy them. It's like, how is this even possible? Are people actually risking their jobs working for Lucasfilm to create these leaks? And apparently they did, because I found out all this stuff through certain sources, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to stick with them and see if they're telling the truth. And yeah, I mean,
Sure enough.
those certain outlets were telling the truth, and I was like, wow, I can really know what's going to happen before it happens.
Yeah.
And of course,
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
people hate that, absolutely hate it. It's like opening the Christmas presents before Christmas, you know?
Right. And then having to rewrap them.
Yeah. But I was always a person that wanted to be in the film industry. I wanted to make movies and stuff. I attempted it with my buddy who went to film school, but it never really panned out. But I like to be
Gotcha.
on the other side. I guess
Yeah.
I do like to have kind of control. I mentioned to you earlier, I was
I'm
like, I
telling you,
have no
man.
control in this podcast right now. It doesn't
Yeah.
feel right.
I saw that. I see, I see underneath, the screen right now. You're trying to push your buttons. You're like, damn it. It's not
None of
me
these
anymore.
buttons are working.
Exactly. None of my setup is working right now. But dude, that is amazing. So first of all, that is absolutely crazy how that worked out. Okay. That that has to be, the dealings of the force, if I ever saw that. Uh and so that's super cool. I mean, that is one of the best, origin stories out there for sure. Your podcast, your show is amazing. Like you mentioned, you like to keep definitely your ear to the ground. A lot of the stuff that is out there for the new shows or that's rumored to be coming down the pipeline, I get it from you, honestly. Because like you said, you got your network already set up, and you just siphon in information like every day. So a lot of the stuff, because sometimes you'll bring me in onto your show, and again, thank you for that. And you'll be like, oh, so what do you think about what Colin Trevorrow said about this upcoming project? I was like, he said what? Like, when did this happen? Like what? I missed it. So absolutely. And you bring up a good point too. A lot of people try to stay away from that, right? And
Yeah.
I flip flop, if I'm being honest. um there's stuff that I absolutely have to know. Like, I cannot sleep if I don't know what's gonna happen. But there's stuff that I'm like, okay, I'm gonna try my best to at least save up some of the some of the mysteries, some of the questions, some of the potential surprises, right, that they can give me still. But it's super super hard, especially nowadays, and especially as you very much well know, being a content creator, right? Because you kind of have to keep an eye out on most of this stuff, right? If you want to be somewhat relevant on your field, let's say. Let me just say hi real quick here on the chat. We got Mr. Hollywood in the house, nerd affiliated. What is up, my man? So guys, a little bit of housekeeping. I'm actually returning to Hey Archer Live tomorrow night at 7:15 p.m. over on Nerd Affiliated. So make sure you check us out. Let's chat. Um, it's gonna be very, very colorful. Everybody saying hi. Appreciate you guys dropping the links. Have a Cowboys fan. Yeah, Dakota was looking good against Brady. Hey, well, there you go.
Dakota
Everybody saying
Rain.
hi. Yeah, right. G-Force Racing, thank you so much for joining, man. I appreciate you so much. Star Wars Sid brings up a good point. Star Wars Celebration feeling is the best. Can't get enough of it. 2017 Orlando was my first celebration. Haven't missed since. So I have only been to and just to wrap it up, Action Figure Podcast, man. Thank you so much for stopping by. I appreciate you. Brad, what is up, man? Thank you for being here. Do back deliveries, man. We are bringing in some heat tonight. Thank you so much, guys, again for being here. We appreciate you. Um, so what I was gonna say is, I went to 2019 in Chicago, the celebration. That was my first one, and of course, I loved it. And then I went this past year, 2022, over to Anaheim. But all the people that I've met there, right, and everybody keeps referencing back to 2017, right, to Orlando. That, as far as I can tell, aside from the very first ones, right, which were very intimate, very small, and I guess you could say you didn't know how good you had it back then, right, compared to now. Uh, 2017 seems to be the celebration to be at. Like that was, the one. That's still the one that most people keep talking about. Like I said, at least the people that I've interacted with on celebration. And I think, like you mentioned, it was just that it was that newest, like we still didn't know what to fully expect from the sequels, right? It was the 40th anniversary, so it was sort of like a good mixture of old and new, right? We were still hopeful about the future. They were seemingly, at least, embracing the past, right, with the legacy characters. And so I think it was just a good combination of things. um, then then they put out The Last Jedi, and then they put out Rise of Skywalker, etc. But so yeah, so I just wanted to bring that up because, like you mentioned, 2017 being a really good one. uh Towns and Star Wars stuff, they was like, we're talking about these rumors. I was like, what rumors? Yeah, exactly, man. That's what I'm saying, man. We gotta keep up, but it's hard because these guys are definitely on the bleeding edge. Do back deliveries link in the chat. Please go ahead and check them out. Much appreciated. Rolando, hey Rolando, is your birthday tomorrow? I saw somewhere on the many posts today that your birthday's tomorrow, and if so, happy early birthday, man. Thank you so much for everything you do for all of us content creators here. Like I said, I don't know how you do it, man. You're on everybody's stream, like active, commenting, moderating, like you are on mine right now. And so, if you have a cloning facility, hit me up because got a few ideas on that. Action Figure Podcast says, never been to Star Wars Celebration before. I did go to a Comic Con and met Matthew Wood. He voiced the battle droids and Grievous. It was pretty cool. Yeah, man. I think that that is definitely one of the best things about Celebration. They pull in, obviously, right, the big hitters, right? They pull in a buffet of actors, of celebrities, obviously related to Star Wars. That I'm not gonna say like they don't show up to other shows, but Celebration, at least in my experience, is usually like the one that you can find the most, right? In one under one roof, like in one spot. The one I was a little bit heartbroken, I still kind of am, was Mark Hamill last year, because I was literally saving up for that autograph. I was like, I do not care how much it costs. I have to meet him. I've never met him.
Yeah.
And then, sure enough, like, what was it, like a week before Celebration, he's like, yeah, guys, like, sorry, I won't be there. Like, I'm working. So I was still, I still pretty devastated. I did get to meet Ewan McGregor, which is, not nothing to scoff at by no means. But like I said, my absolute hope was to be able to meet Mark Hamill. So I'm still holding out hope that maybe, in the next one that happens here in the States, that he actually shows up. But we'll see. I know that he's kind of, how do you call it? He is not necessarily under the same, contract or, constraints as some of the newer actors, or younger actors, I should say.
Yeah, man. Last year,
Uh,
2022, I was lucky enough to see with my own eyes Ewan McGregor 4 times in reality.
oh, come on now. Why you
Yeah,
gotta flex like that?
three times in Anaheim and one time in San Antonio, which
I know.
yeah.
I still. So, as you know, right? I went out there, and my whole goal was to meet Ewan McGregor, which I did, and it was amazing. And he is
Yeah.
magical, and he is beautiful, and he's just perfect, right? I managed to sneak into the Obi-Wan Kenobi premiere, like the panel, right?
Oh,
With
you did?
him, yeah, with him live. So quick story on that. I didn't know it was happening. Yeah, okay, I take that back. I did know it was happening. It was on Thursday, right, the very first day. And they were gonna debut. They had the red carpet and stuff, but they blocked off that whole section, right? There was
Mhm.
security. There was literal like blocked off. It was
Yeah.
open during the day, but then as the convention started winding down and the show premiere was getting closer, they literally cordoned off. Like they put barriers and stuff, and there were security people like every 6 feet, right? Like they were like it was just a barrier. And so I was like, all right, how do I get in? And they're like, oh, you had to have been in a panel this morning and
Mhm.
get like a wristband, like a
Yeah.
golden wristband. If you do not have that golden wristband, you do not get in.
Right.
I was like, are you kidding me? So, like, did I miss my window this morning? Because I didn't get into the panel, right? But
Yeah.
I was like, had I known that I need to be physically there on the panel, I would have tried to find a way to be there, right?
Yeah.
And so, because I was there physically, like I arrived on Wednesday night, and so I'm there to like just I was like I cannot miss it. Like this is the thing, right, to be at. And so you reminded me when you were talking about like the 40th
Yeah.
anniversary panel. I was like, this like I have to get in. Obviously a lot of people are trying to get in, playing dumb, and they're like, nope, go back, like nope, go back. They're like, okay guys, like seriously, like you need the golden wristband, because that's how we accounted for how many seats, and we're only allowed so many, right? It's like, so if you don't have one, you don't get in, that's it. And we're like, oh come on. And then literally next to me, I'm pretty sure I didn't fully recognize her because again I was freaking out about how to get in. I'm pretty sure it was Carly King. I don't know if you've seen her on YouTube.
Yeah, I
She
know who
does a
that
lot of
is.
like, yeah, like lightsaber stunts and stuff
Yeah.
like that, right? And she was freaking out because she did not have a golden wristband either. So she's like, "Oh, my friends are in there. I'm so and so. Not okay, fine." She didn't say like I'm so and so. She said I need to be there. Like I need to cover this, for my channel. Blah blah. She did not name drop. At least what I heard. Okay, at least what I heard. But she's like, "Please, please, please," And the guy's like, "No, like again, I'm sorry, I cannot. If it was up to me, I'll let everybody in. Blah blah blah. All of that, right?" And she's like, "Oh my god!" And she runs off, right, like from the I guess from the barrier. And I'm still just pacing like back and forth. Dude, she comes back like not even 2 minutes later, and she doesn't say anything. She just goes, boom, like golden wristband. And the guy's like, come on in. I was like, what the hell? Like, what just happened? And she just goes in and she like runs off because the premiere was about to start. And I was like, what happened? Like, where the hell did she get it? And how can I get one? So I was freaking out how, she got one in such a short like time. And so I was like, I don't know how I'm doing it, but I'm getting in there. Like if I had to tackle somebody, like I just might, you're right. But then I was like, it's like different levels of security. So I'm like, I may maybe make it past the first one. But anyway, point is, a buddy of mine that was in the panel in the morning emailed me his QR code saying that, hey, this is your ticket to get in the morning, right? And so I'm not necessarily proud of this part, but I was like, I made up the story that I had gotten into the panel, right, by right, that I had got the ticket. My flight got delayed, so I wasn't there physically, so I didn't think it was, like fair and stuff. And then and the guy says no. And I was like, come on. And so another guy comes in, like not from the building, but from like Lucasfilm, and he's like, what's going on? Like, we need you over here. And he's like, oh, like, these guys. And he's like, oh, what happened? And so I quickly tell him again, and the guy's like, yeah, whatever, come in. And I was like, dude, yes. So I just haul ass like down the red carpet, dude. I didn't even get to see like the props and stuff. I just ran. So I get in and they close the doors because it was a closed door event, right? So they
Yeah.
literally close the doors and the whole thing just starts. So
Wow.
I got a really bad seat, but I do not care. Like I was in the room.
Yeah.
That was good enough for me.
Yeah.
Uh, so I know, I can relate definitely to that feeling. Um, but how do you call it? Hey, Rolando. All right, man. happy birthday tomorrow, man. I hope you have an awesome one. And like I said, thank you so much for all your support and everything that you do for us content creators here on YouTube. Anyone going to London celebration this year? I'll be out there super. Oh man, now you're making me jealous. Um, so you guys are gonna be covering some of that, no?
Yeah, Colin and Josh are going, and another one of my buddies might go from the podcast. I originally was gonna go, but I was like, man, it's gonna cost a lot of money,
Yeah.
and a lot of money that I kind of don't want to spend right now because
Oh, I agree.
I have two older daughters that are moving transitioning into adulthood, and I might have to help them with certain
Yeah, yeah.
things. And yeah, it's I've been to 4 celebrations, so I mean,
Nice.
it's kind of like one of those things that yeah, I've been there. They've all been uniquely great and fantastic, but
Nice.
I need to yeah, it got really close because my daughter graduated from high school last year,
Oh,
and her graduation almost ended up at the same time as celebration. So that would have been a huge debacle. But luckily, she graduated the weekend after. And my
okay.
brother was supposed to go from Dallas, and his daughter graduated as well, but she graduated during celebration, so he ended
Yikes.
up not going.
Sure, yeah.
So yeah,
Understandable. Understandable. But yeah, man, that yeah, I appreciate that, man. Um, Magical. Yeah, no, seriously, man, he is just absolutely gorgeous.
yeah. Ewan's
Uh,
one of those celebrities you see on TV, then you see in real life, and they look how you would expect for them
oh
to
my
look
god,
in real life. I
yes.
mean, it's like it's Ewan McGregor.
And it's yeah, right. And I don't know, like the first thing that struck to me is like he's not that tall. First of
Yeah,
all, like I think he's just like maybe around my height, maybe a little bit taller, like an inch maybe.
yeah.
So and
I
I'm
have
not
our
a tall
picture
guy.
right there on the
There you
wall of
go.
me and him. I
For
think I'm about 2 inches taller than him.
there you go. Yeah.
Yeah,
And so that was one thing that struck me as but the other thing, dude, he was super nice, right? I mean, he is just
yeah. He was really
I
nice.
I had nothing but good experiences.
I asked him to be
And
on our podcast. He goes, "Yeah, sure."
that's awesome.
That was in San Antonio.
And what was that was what I was gonna say. So I spent all my monies right over in Anaheim,
Yeah.
which again, no regrets. But lo and behold, I come back and they're like, "Hey, we got a guest coming in into San Antonio for this convention. Ewan McGregor, get a picture of him." I was like, "God dang it!" Like,
Yeah.
but yeah, no, I couldn't swing it like that close. I spent
Yeah.
like, I mean, I think his price was just a little bit cheaper than it was in Celebration, but not by a whole lot. Um, and so yeah, so I hope I'm hoping to see him again.
Yeah.
But I know that this was his first like celebration. So
Yeah, the cool thing was at Celebration, I was in my TIE pilot. I didn't wear my helmet, but my
okay.
other buddy has a scout, and then Colin came out as Anakin, and we just walked up randomly to the Star Wars show stage, and we were like
Oh
right there, and it was just perfect timing because one of the announcers came out and says a really, really high profile guest is about to come out, so don't walk away. And I'm like, really? And we started like wondering who it was.
yeah,
Friggin' Ewan McGregor walks out and
yeah.
addresses the crowd, and we're right. You can see us in the video. We're like standing right there.
Oh, that's amazing, dude. Yeah,
And we're like, oh my god, this is so great. And he mentions coming to San Antonio in the video too.
yeah,
Like, I'm only going to 2 places next year, which I think he went to more actually.
yeah.
But at that time, he's only scheduled for San Antonio and I think Glasgow or something.
Oh
So
yeah. You're right. You're right.
yeah,
Kenobi the Grifter. Yeah, right. Seriously. Definitely to hit up Celebration 1 year. Thanks for live streaming for. Oh yeah, so um, Hey Archer had invited me to his show that Thursday,
oh
and I
cool.
was like, dude, I'm at Celebration, so if you're okay with a really bad connection because there's 15,000 people in like a small like space and everybody's using their cell phone for everything, I will come in like to your show. He's like, dude, let's do it. So I was just walking around, during the live show and just showing them like different sections, and the internet was dropping like every like 2 minutes. And so it was a little bit choppy, but it was fun, right? Like I got to share with those guys what was going on at like real time. So I think we got we got a question here on the chat. So, what is your favorite sequel and prequel? Ooh,
Yeah, for me, sequel would be Force Awakens and prequel would be Episode 1. The
there you
hype
go.
for Episode 1 was unbelievable.
Right. Oh man.
The
I
Maul Kenobi Qui-Gon fight was great. Loved
Yeah.
it. I've seen that
It's
so many times. The
agreed.
music was fantastic. Duel of the Fates, and it's set up the prequels. I know a lot of like the young bloods nowadays will say Episode 3 was so great, Battle of the Heroes, but I mean, I had 20 years to imagine what that would be like, and it did
Yeah.
not live up to my imagination. That's why I was like disappointed with it. I was like, it was a
Right.
whole lot
Right.
better in my head, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Dude, that's awesome. And Force Awakens, was that just because it opened up?
Another kind of byproduct of like the big time hype and the crowds and the merchandise, and I really I knew beforehand what was going to happen, and I found out kind of who to trust of people who actually had legitimate sources and legitimate information, and knowing the backstory as well behind when Harrison Ford broke his foot on the Millennium Falcon door and how the story shifted.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't talk about I talk about it all the time on the podcast. I haven't talked about it recently, but there's a certain point in time where The Force Awakens was a totally different film. And when
Yep.
Harrison Ford broke his foot, that allowed Kasdan and Abrams to kind of do some rewrites and change the story around a whole lot. And to me, it feels like that first story they had was so cool. It was so Star Warsy.
Very true. Very
And
true.
yeah, it was totally changed. So yeah, it's an interesting thing.
Yeah. No. Definitely. It was totally worth it. Oh, my lousy coverage. What is going on, man? Thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate it, man. So Star Wars Sid says Force Awakens and Revenge of the Sith. Pretty good. Okay. Yeah, yeah, I see that. Great choices, answers to Brown Fett. Let's see. Legacy of Nerd says, how much do you love the non-Mandalorian Book of Boba Fett episodes? One being you loved it, to 10 you want to marry them.
I think I'm in the camp of liking them a lot more than most people, because I saw the logic behind Boba Fett not being this kind of anti-hero and how he became what he became in that story. So I guess maybe 7, 8.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah,
yeah, the
that's definitely above
episodes.
average.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's just I really don't like it when the mass populace doesn't like something that I like. And I
Yeah,
think Book of Boba Fett, there was like kind of an overreaction to it, and people are like, "Well, why are there Mandalorian episodes in there?" It's like, "Well, why not? I mean, it's
exactly.
more Mando. I mean, it's all like one big story. You kind of have
It
to
is.
watch everything, and you see things that people don't see if you're paying attention. Like the trailer that just aired last night for the Mandalorian season 3. There's a lot of stuff in there. There's the
There
Rebels
is.
connection.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot of Rebels connections. There's Mandalorian episode connections. I mean, it's from other works aside from the Mandalorian, and I mean, there's a lot of detail in there. We kind of talked about it for the podcast, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of stuff in there that I think you miss if you only watch it once or twice. So
Agreed.
that's one of the many facets of Star Wars that I just love: the used universe, the lived-in universe, the history, the mythology, everything that inspired Star Wars, the way George Lucas created it, the way that other people have put their fingerprints and talent, and
Yeah.
just the perfect
Very true.
storm of Star Wars. I mean, it's something just kind of, I talk about it all the time on our podcast, how it's kind of interwoven in my
Yeah.
DNA. It's just
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
it's just
Absolutely.
something that's a part of me and will probably never leave. And
Yeah. Well, I
that's why
mean,
I have
you're
a
doing.
podcast. And
Yeah, I was gonna
I'm
say that's why you're doing some amazing work, man. You know that you can tell honestly that it's coming from a place of love, right? That it's
yeah,
not just
yeah,
hey, let's just get out there and spew our views, right, without any rhyme or
yeah,
reason. Like I said, I've always enjoyed our conversations, both online and offline, or off camera, I should say, because I'm of that camp too, right? I mean, I like what I like. There will always be people that, you know, are sometimes jumping into the fat right of hating something without necessarily them actually being bothered by it. But it is what it is. That's something that comes, I think, with the territory of being such a huge fandom, right? And trying to cover so many different um, trying to cover a whole lot of ground, trying to please a whole lot of people, right? I mean, it's just inevitable up to a certain point. Dave's Dimension, what is going on, man? Thanks so much for being here, man. Appreciate you. Let's see. Nerd Affiliated says, after watching Clone Wars, the cartoon, I'd say episode 3 and Force Awakens. I did hate episode 3 upon first viewing. Okay, okay. Yeah, I gotta say, I feel that that's generally now the perception of the prequels, right? They used to be sort of crapped on, and then but now you look at them and you're like, you know what? At least they have a cohesive, right? You know, storyline, or you can see how it gets progressively darker. You can see it as a trilogy, like you can see the path. um Dave saying hi. Let's see, Legacy Owner 7-8. So he is in a long term relationship with it. There you go. And yes, he is, man. You're not. I don't know if you were here for the beginning of the show, but he definitely is in a long term relationship with Star Wars. So I think more so than most of us. Uh, Archer says, "I want to divorce from Book of Boba Fett." Oof, come on now. Uh, See, he at least bought a dinner. There were a couple of good moments, though. Yeah, they were definitely. Uh, Again, I'm on the camp of more than a couple, but there were definitely some undisputed good moments in that show that I think
Yeah.
uh, the grand majority of people cannot, I guess, discard. Dave's Dimension says, "I loved Book of Boba Fett. I just didn't like the Mighty Morphin Vesper Rangers. Aside from that, it ripped all the way through. Loved the story and perspective of a bounty hunter who developed. The narrative felt right, but a little lost at moments. Yeah, I mean, I can see that. I think that's fair. There were definitely some times that are, or some moments, maybe even full episodes when you're like, I don't know which way like we're supposed to lean here. Um, but overall, like I said, I enjoyed it. I mean, still Boba Fett is still one of my favorite characters. I mean, got a whole shelf just up there. Um, Archer says it's turned into a business. Trey hate something before giving it a chance. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, you're absolutely right. Clone Wars helped sell the idea that Anakin felt betrayed by the Jedi. Yeah, I think, and I know, David feels the same way. I think the animated shows have enhanced. They have, shed some new light. And I'll be honest with you, in some cases they've patched up some of the previous work in Star Wars, right? Obviously the movies being the main ones, because that's all we had up to a point. Um, so that's a good point. After you see Clone Wars, right, and you watch the show, and you go back to episodes 2 and 3, let's say, um, you see them very differently, right? Like you feel a whole lot more weight to Anakin going over to the dark side and things like that. Um, so I believe, like you mentioned, Mandalorian will pull in from Rebels, definitely. Why? Because we got Ahsoka coming right up, right? Which is gonna be very, very it's woven into its DNA, the Rebels show. And so that's gonna be very interesting. I know that there's been quite a few leaks already for the Ahsoka show and for what it's supposed to be in the story. I'll be honest with you, I was keeping up with them up to a certain point. I was like, you know what? This is getting very detailed. So I'm a little bit afraid that it's all gonna be true, and then I'm gonna have nothing. So I sort of stopped for the last maybe like week or so. Like I stopped reading them. Um, but you tell me, just in a nutshell, what do you think? Is it gonna be good?
Yeah, I recently read the most recent leaks and the most detailed stuff. And it sounds kind of what I think we're all kind of expecting.
Okay.
I think there's some key points and key characters that we're all going to see. But there was some leaks that dropped months and months ago that had a lot of exciting things in it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I was
So
up to that point. I was still reading them.
yeah,
Uh,
that along with Mandalorian season 3.
yes.
So yeah, everything from who Christopher Lloyd plays and
Agreed.
all
Yeah.
that stuff and certain characters, and that's why when you look at this trailer, it's like, man, they don't really show you anything if these leaks are correct.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. You're right. Sal in the house. What is going on, man? Feel the same way about Hope. The other movies made Hope better. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Very true. Um, Good evening, fellas. What's up? I think did I read those in the wrong order? um, so, Chad, do you guys have any other questions for our guest tonight? We are fastly approaching the 1 hour mark here. Just as I say that, LeBron asks, "Who's your favorite legend character and why?" Ooh, pretty broad.
Legends, like not in the films. Is that what he means?
I think so. I think he's talking about
Mm.
what you and I used to know as the expanded universe.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the expanded universe. Like I said, I really wasn't a big fan of the books per se, but I really like that N64 video game, Shadows of the Empire, with Dash
Yes,
Rendar.
of course.
And once I played that, and I would go to, I think it was J.C. Penney. They had like a demo of it where you could fly the snow speeder around the legs of the
I
AT-AT.
remember that. I remember
And
that. Yeah.
I remember doing that, and then meeting Dash Rendar and the Ebon Hawk, and finding out about Prince Shizor and that whole
Yes.
thing. But yeah, I guess, I mean, Dash Rendar. I mean, it got my brain and my gears turning about a possible continuation of the
Sure.
episodes with Dash Rendar and the Ebon Hawk looking so much like the Falcon. It's like, well, he's kind of a it's kind of equivalent to what
Yeah.
Han Solo is, but I mean, I'll allow it. Just make Dash Rendar canon.
Right. Yes. Exactly.
And that's why I like Filoni and Favreau, what they're doing with the Mandalorian. They're kind of reincorporating legends and old expanded
Yep.
universe stuff into the show, and it's it's a great thing that they're doing. I know a lot of fans wish they would just directly adapt the expanded universe
Sure.
onto live action, but which is something I think you totally can do. We always bring up, if I were running Lucasfilm on the podcast,
Right. Right.
what would you do? And one of the things I would do is I just create the expanded universe. I'd
Right. I
create the
mean,
expanded universe in live action. I don't care if like people on the street that watch it don't get it. I mean, you
yeah.
got to do research. I mean,
Yep.
that's kind of what Star Wars has always been. Star Wars has never labeled planets. We found out later that that sand planet was Tatooine.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, Rogue One did a fantastic job of labeling the planets, which I
Right.
wish
Yes.
they would have kept that whole template moving forward, but they
Agreed.
didn't. Um, but I mean, fans are savvy enough. I think it's a different type of fan these days where if you're into something, if something catches your attention, then you'll do the deep dive. You'll look at the
Hmm.
books and go online and find out the character names if they're not even said, or the species, and
Yep.
do
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
that. And also the books that they're releasing since April 26th of 2014, all the books that Lucasfilm has published, they're all canon.
They're all
They all
canon. Yep.
count towards the live
Exactly.
action stuff. Now, there's been some stuff that kind of doesn't jive. It's not totally, it totally doesn't. I think some of the Cobb Vanth stuff, I think, wasn't as
Yeah.
accurate as what was said in
Right.
the trilogy for the Aftermath books.
Right.
But I think Pablo Hidalgo, who's on the story group, said anything live action overrides what was in
Overrides.
print,
Yeah.
comic books, novels.
And
So
yeah, and I guess that it makes sense because honestly, that's what gets the most exposure, right? I mean, that's what
yeah,
what most people see is the live action stuff. And yeah, I remember something like Cobb Band, used to be the sheriff of Freetown,
yeah,
and that got changed to what is it, Muspelgo,
yes,
in the show, right? But beyond that, the main points are there, right? He did have Boba Fett's armor, all of that stuff. So
yeah,
it's just one of those things like how much can you reconcile, right?
yeah,
In return to having a character jump, purely from the books onto the screen, right? And done right. I mean, he's kind of a fan favorite, um,
yeah,
and so it's just one of those things that there's so many stories out there they just keep adding to them. So of course, even statistically, right, stuff is not gonna be perfectly,
Yeah.
I guess jiving with it with everything else, like always, right?
Right.
Um,
Right. Yeah.
but
For a long time, for me, Star Wars was almost like science fiction.
yeah,
It's not until a few years back I considered it to be more fantasy, more of like a fairy tale told to you
yeah,
at bedtime. Some stuff is not gonna make sense. It's not gonna have the most logic,
right,
but I mean, it's a story. I mean, it's
yeah,
something that's fantasy,
yeah.
and people I think kind of have to let go of that doesn't make sense with this. It's like,
Yeah,
well,
exactly. Like I remember something about the like Ahsoka's lightsaber colors. They don't match. They're supposed to be
yeah. I
whatever.
mean,
They're supposed to be green,
there's
but
no sound in space, guys.
yeah.
You can't
First
hear
of
all
all,
this
right?
stuff.
Like
There's no
those like
fire in space either.
those first like 30 seconds rules were out the window.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And
So
spaceships cannot bank in space. Like there's
yeah,
atmosphere.
exactly. So Sal brings up a good point of one of my favorite characters from the expanded universe as well, Cal Katarn. Uh,
Yes.
I mean, Cal Katarn, I feel, has been sort of ingrained into other characters that we've come to know and love. There's a lot of Cal Katarn, I would say, and great, now I'm blanking out. Uh, in characters Rebel, Freddie Prinze Jr. Um,
Kanan.
yes, in Kanan Jarrus. I think there's some DNA, from Cal Katarn in there. There's some for basically like the Jedi that didn't finish his training turned sort of bounty hunter, smuggler. Like you see a lot of that stuff, right? Um, and so I think a lot of that is owned by Cal Katarn. But Cal Katarn has some pretty interesting stories in the games that I would absolutely love, to see it. And like you mentioned, it still could be done. A lot of this stuff could still work within the new frame, right? Like within the new story reference. But again, it's just one of those things where they're like, yeah, we don't want to touch that. Anakin Solo was my favorite. Yeah, those solo kits were something else, definitely.
Yeah.
Rock those PC games. Yeah, man, same here. I used to love them so much.
Yeah. Dark Forces and X-Wing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Have
I mean,
Yeah, I have X-Wing on my shelf right now
there you go.
from the
Very
old
nice.
PC days.
Yes. Uh, and so let's see. Nerd Affiliated wants to play and says, if I was running Lucasfilm, I'd do alternate universes, essentially expand Visions. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they Visions is coming back yeah,
Yeah.
for a second season fairly soon. So it's going to be interesting to see some of those. And I feel that those are just about the only ones that are being handled sort of like this. What you're mentioning here, Archer. They're sort of not being forced, right, to play nice with everything else in terms of the story, right? They're sort of looked at in as in a bubble, like a little micro universe, right, on their own, and people get to play around in there. So it would be definitely interesting to see that.
There was
Um,
a girl who dressed up as Lucy Liu's character with the umbrella lightsabers
oh yeah,
at Celebration. She made herself black and white too. Yeah.
that's amazing. I
Yeah.
love fans, man.
Really.
Like they're super
Yeah.
creative.
Yeah.
I look at something like that. I'm like, I wish I was like a tenth of like that creative drive. Uh, Days Dimension says, Archer, yes, give us a what if Star Wars. Absolutely. Which, by the way, we had comic books like that. And I know that
Yeah.
David, remembers those. We had comic books like that. One of my favorites was a pretty obvious one, but I just like the way it looked. What if Luke was actually killed by the Wampa in Hoth, right?
Mm.
What happens then? So that's where the timeline splits off into an altered universe. And lo and behold, who was the only one left to be trained? Leia, right? And so we saw a little bit of that in Rise of Skywalker, right? Just a glimpse of her actually being trained. But in the What If, which I think they were called Infinities or something like that series, and so they were basically the original trilogy retold, right? In an
Mhm.
alternate, you know, each one of them were different. So I thought that was always a cool idea. I would love to see it. Even if they do it, or maybe even especially if they do it animated like they did with Marvel, I think those would be incredible. I love Vision. My favorite part of Star Wars is Western Kurosawa. Yes, exactly. Which again, very very woven into the DNA of Star Wars. So Rolando dropping the links here. Appreciate it, man. Thank you so much, guys. Go check out the links that they're dropping right now. Hey, Ricardo, what is going on, man? Nah, no worries, man. Hey, you are never late, man. Here, and the good thing is you can go back for the replay. So we appreciate you stopping by, man. Mara Jade, yeah, don't get me started on Mara Jade because we kind of need that. uh, Rogue Squadron, definitely. Hopefully, hopefully that project is still somewhere out there to be made into a movie, TV show. At this point, I'll take an animated show, like something. I don't know. I was so hyped for
Yeah,
of all the movies that we knew were coming. I was so hyped for that one because uh,
yeah,
it had a nice interwoven like path with other stories that could have branched out from there. But
yeah. It's such a shame that we don't get at least one Star Wars film a year. I mean, it's Star
right,
Wars.
come on,
You look at
exactly,
Marvel; they're releasing like 6 a year now, and it's like, come on,
exactly,
that's Marvel. I mean, Star Wars. I mean, there's a lot of, despite what Kathleen Kennedy says, that there are a lot of stories that have already been written that you can just
yeah,
adapt, and I think people would be happy. I mean, there'd be source material, and then you don't even have to adapt it 100%. You can deviate, and you can
yeah,
do. And I mean, there's going to be fan favorite characters on screen, and you can have spin-offs for those characters. I mean, it's
exactly. That's the thing, right? I mean, yeah, I don't know. I look at Marvel, I'm like you said, why can't we have this? We got just as many characters, if not
yeah,
more.
yeah.
I stories galore. I mean, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. The
We
new rumor, actually, the one of the bleeding edge rumors that we spoke about was the fact that at Celebration, the rumor is they're going to announce a new trilogy, and it's going to start with Damon Lindelof's film in 2025, and then we're going to get a film in 2026 and 2027.
oof.
I'm not sure how that's going to jive because, as we all know, Disney owns the Avatar franchise, and at
Yep.
first it was going to be Star Wars and Avatar, Star Wars and Avatar, just alternating years.
Right.
So if they release one, so 2023 we were supposed to get Rogue Squadron, that's not happening.
Yeah.
2024 we're going to get the third Avatar film. 2025 is open, but then 2026 there's a dilemma there unless they release it in May instead of December. So we shall see what happens.
Yeah, no kidding, man. So yeah, I'm all for more movies. I want more movies, if it makes sense, right? I don't want them to just say, yeah, we're gonna put out a trilogy just for the sake of saying we're still making movies, right? Like you mentioned, a
You
lot
talking
could
about
be done.
planning?
Sorry.
You
Yeah,
talking about
exactly, right.
planning?
Like does somebody know they're making a trilogy? Like, were they
I
informed?
the thing that gives me confidence about this rumored trilogy is Damon Lindelof.
True. That's actually a good point.
He's been a Star Wars fan all his life. He wore a Star Wars T-shirt to the first meeting he had with J.J. Abrams about
Yeah,
Lost, and that's how they got their
that just
conversation
set up the
started.
relationship. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. Captain Spaulding, man, thank you so much for coming in. No worries, brother. There's always the rewatch. Don't worry about that. Okay, guys. So we have run up here just over Jaeger coming in for the clutch. Um, we have just run up, our time here on the high ground because we have such an awesome guest. We could do this for hours, and well, technically, we have done this for hours, by now.
yeah.
So
If you want to catch more General Kenobi, go to Star Stuff Podcast.
there you go.
Then check them out there.
Yeah, not apparently I'm on like 12 episodes now, so yay me. Uh
I
so
like how the number keeps growing every time you mention it.
yeah.
We're on 28 episodes.
Exactly. So I've been there since the beginning. What are you talking about?
Yeah, and I just want to
So
say thank you, by the way. I don't know if I've thanked you enough
nah, man, are you kidding me? Like
for coming on the podcast. Yeah, man, you have
this.
a great way of podcasting and talking about Star Wars. And
No, I appreciate that, man. And right back at you, man. Like I said, I thoroughly enjoy our chats, about any subject that within Star Wars. I always walk away with some new information. When we chat, like I said, both on camera and off camera. So first of all, let me thank you for making time. Uh, Again, I know you're super busy. You do have a full-time job. That's what people sometimes don't realize, right? And running the podcast is like a second full-time job. So
It,
um,
it
and
sure
I
is,
know,
man.
yeah, yeah, no, absolutely, man. Like I said, I'm barely holding on to doing like an hour a week, and so thank you for that. Like I really do appreciate it. Thank you for joining us here in the high ground. You are welcome to come back at any time, uh, 12 times if you wish so. But so guys here on the chat, and I want to take this opportunity that we got a good turnout and that we got a great guest. I just want to make a quick announcement, although an important one. So I am dropping this link here on the chat, and I just wanted to share with you guys, since you guys, are my main crew, my my main audience, that I actually launched a second channel on YouTube. We are actually going international, so we launched General Kenobi's Bunker in Espanol. So, if you are so inclined, and I would greatly appreciate it if you go check that out, if you share that with people you think would enjoy it. We already got a couple of episodes up there. One of them is a toy hunt, which was super hilarious because my brain kept, like not being able to switch proper. So go check that out. I would appreciate it, some feedback on that. Um, Again, this is just sort of a way to expand a little bit more on the culture, that I love so much, which is Star Wars. And if I can spread it maybe a little bit better to other, like, you know, uh, how can I say it? To other like Spanish speaking people, I'm gonna try to do that. I say that now, but putting out like 4 videos a week is getting kind of nuts already. So we'll see how that goes. But I would appreciate it again, guys, if you share, with friends, with family. Uh, it's a fun project. I hope that it works out. I want it to work out. Like I said, it's just I love doing this stuff, and so I was like, hey, who needs sleep, right? So let's just go ahead and make another channel. So again, everybody here on the chat, I'd appreciate you stopping by. Go check out that General Canoes Bunker in Espanol. Like I said, spread around, share it. Let me know what you guys think, if you understand it, that is. And so I would appreciate some feedback. Um, so yeah, appreciate it, man. This is the way. And yes, sir, we are going international. So good thing you mentioned that, because again, guys, I will be a guest. You see how I switch hats so fast? I will be a guest tomorrow on Nerd Affiliated Hey Archer live show at 7:15 p.m. Central. Gracias a ustedes. Um, right, exactly. I mean, come on. And so once again, guys, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. Thank you to my host, David. So one last time, David, where can they find your stuff?
Everywhere. Spotify, Apple, YouTube, TikTok,
Exactly.
Twitter, Instagram. Just search up Star Wars Stuff Podcast. You'll find us there. So,
Absolutely. I mean,
yeah.
these guys are everywhere, and with good reason,
Patreon.
guys. There you go. I was gonna say they do have a Patreon if you want to check that out. They put out some exclusive content there for Patreon members. Uh, I've been on one of those, so it's pretty cool.
I think you've been on more than one, actually.
Is it?
I think so.
Oh snap!
Maybe
There
I
you
didn't
go.
tell you in the beginning.
Surprise. So yeah, guys, definitely if you're so inclined, go check that out. I would appreciate it if you guys go subscribe also to the Star Wars Stuff podcast over here on YouTube, and check them out basically anywhere that you get your podcasts. Okay. I also dropped the link to the Facebook chat. To the Facebook group in the chat. So go and check that out. Join up. There's some really cool posts every single day. David is super active there, so go bug him there. Um, Thank you once again for joining us here tonight. General Canoes Bunker en Español, go check that out. And once and for the last time, thank you, David, for joining us here. Again, you are welcome at any time. This was super fun, as always.
Thanks
And
for having me.
I thank you. And yeah, guys, so I hope you're having a really good night. I hope that you guys are enjoying the Bad Batch, which we will try to talk about that on Friday here live, but we'll see. The timing is going to be a little bit different because I think we got a play date to go to. Um, and so, yeah, thank you again, guys. Have a good night. Thank you, David. We appreciate you. And may the force be with you.
Always.